mute myself. Good evening and welcome, and Happy New Year to you. I'm Sheila Balgobin, and I am the Dream Decipherer, and I help you to crack the code of your sleep and dreams so you can sleep sound and dream deep. This evening, this dream is quite interesting as it has two possible meanings for the dreamer, and it's got strings hanging off me. And it's really up to the dreamer to be able to find which interpretation or possible interpretation resonates with them. And people say, well, how do I know if it's the right interpretation? It's almost as if a click goes off in your head, and it just feels right. You know when it's right. But let's get into this and find out what it is, at least two possible meanings that this dream may have. As I said, dreams over time can change their significance and the meaning that is drawn from them because time has passed, experiences have taken place, and therefore the perspective that one has when one looks back at a dream can either show some type of progress, or you can draw new insights that will can help spur further development. But let's see what this dream is about. The dreamer reports that she was meditating in a deep meditative state when her nephew was interrupted her, and she tried to stay with the moment and keep meditating, but her nephew keeps insisting on saying goodbye. And while she's pleased that he's interested in him wanting to acknowledge her presence and to take leave of her, she was also irritated that he kept interrupting her meditation time. The dreamer finds herself in an office of her old home, and when she's while at in this office in this old home, there's a middle-aged man there. And though she doesn't name the man, she says that he's familiar enough that she's not concerned that he's present. But he's got some newspapers with him, the Sun and the Daily Express. And the dreamer goes through the Sun newspaper with this gentleman and showing him that there was really no good news in it except for one positive story. And she wasn't quite sure what the story was about, but maybe it was about someone being rescued or with regard to sports. But she advises him or suggests that this man stop reading this newspaper because basically it was just filling his mind with shite. No two ways about it. But for some reason, at this point, the dreamer realizes that she doesn't know this person very well and starts to feel a bit leery, a bit nervous about being on her own with this person. So she leaves this older gentleman that was upstairs, and goes downstairs, and there are three teenagers down there. And they're sort of like there's this program called the In-Betweeners, and they're sort of like that. The dreamer assumes that these are friends of her nephew's. Then she sees that her nephew has put the shopping in the oven. And she's thinking, what an idiot. Why didn't he put the stuff in the fridge? So she goes around moving things like green peppers or bell peppers and vegetables to the fridge from the oven. And when she suddenly realizes that the grill is on and that there are 5 packs of tortillas in the package were cooking in the cellophane. And so, muttering to herself about what an idiot this child is, the boys the three boys apparently ask her if they could have the tortillas to eat. So she unwraps them and puts them back in the oven to cook. Now, as there were 5 packs, she only did 1 pack that she put in the oven for the to warm up for these teenagers, but she puts the remaining packs into the fridge, and then suddenly realizes that they're all moldy. And she asked these young men, where did they get these tortillas from? And apparently, they had taken them out of the freezer and defrosted them, but they had gone moldy. It's then that the dreamer realizes that the time of day, it was 3:30 p.m., and she couldn't understand why her nephew was home had only just left for school when he should have been coming home from school at that time. And the dream ends with the dreamer waking up with a taste of a sharp lemony taste in her mouth, and the sense that she swallowed a fly or a spider. Now that's a interesting end to a dream, but there's a lot going on in this dream, and as I said, there's more than one possible interpretation as to what the dream is trying to communicate to the dreamers. But we'll go through it and we'll see what we come up with. Now, the first bit was that the dreamer reported being in a deep state of meditation or contemplation, but her nephew um, was kept getting in the way, kept interrupting. And my first question to the dreamer here would be, who does this? Who does this, or what rather, does this nephew represent? Remember, as I always say, that they're the people who appear in our dreams are not necessarily themselves. They may very well be, but quite often they're representing some aspect of ourselves. So I would ask the dreamer here, what is it about the nephew? What qualities or personality traits that are could resonate in some way with the dreamer herself? Now, the nephew insists on saying goodbye. And if we look at the nephew as representing not necessarily himself, but some youthful or young or fresh aspect of the dreamer, um, or represents the dreamer in the sense of youthfulness or youthful attitudes, is perhaps here there's some kind of farewell that the dreamer is addressing, or regret, or saying farewell to some kind of youthful aspect of herself. um the young men in dreams and often represent the what we call the pure eternum in Latin, which, or the eternal youth. So the carefree eternal youth doesn't think much and just is out, blundering their way through life and not taking anything very seriously. And I just wonder if this may be the younger aspect of the dreamer's inner male, the animus, that youthful part that just enjoys life and does their own thing. Now, it's moving on from there. It's interesting that the dreamer found herself in the her old office in the old house, and I wonder if that maybe could indicate that there was some part of the dreamer that she was looking at or needed to address that was no longer valid for her. Houses often represent um, our inner lives, with the different rooms, the different compartments, dealing the different rooms of the house being different aspects of ourselves. And the fact that this took place in the kitchen or the heart of the house, because everybody goes into the kitchen at some point. So it really is the heart of the house. And there's something about being in an old space that maybe suggests that there's some part of the dreamer or some aspect of the dreamer's life that's just no longer valid. It's comfortable, it's well known, but it's no longer there for them, or no longer a part of them. Now, in this space, in this old house, an old office, and upstairs, and on this second level of the house, there's a middle-aged man in this place. Now, the dreamer doesn't say that she actually knows him, but feels comfortable enough, where he feels familiar enough to her, that she's willing to, just have a conversation with him. How he got there or why he was there is not clear, but it's it's again another aspect of the inner male or animus, but this time a more mature male and animus, so a more thinking um, part of the perhaps of the dreamer being represented here. But all from having a discussion about the crap that's in newspapers, and the newspaper specifically mentioned being the Sun, which is a tabloid, which is not known for the most serious demeanor when it comes to news, but um, the interesting thing about the name of the paper being the Sun, and therefore having to illuminate, to give light. Yet the dreamer goes through this newspaper with this mature gentleman and says it's a load of crap. It really is. You're just filling your mind with shit. So you really need to stop reading this stuff. There's secrets, there's lies, there's gossip, there's all kinds of stuff. It's just really not just nonsense and not worth it. And but there was one good piece of news, which was about sports, or perhaps somebody being rescued. And but in any case, it's mental garbage, it's refuse, and is not needed to for a happy life. I also wonder if there's something here about an oblique reference to the pandemic, where you have people pumping out all kinds of information, a lot of it erroneous, and people are buying into it and creating an even greater problem than we started with back in March. That's a possibility as well. In any case, the dreamer suddenly becomes a bit wary or leery of this older gentleman, and decides it's time to leave that place, and goes from this old study downstairs into the kitchen, where these three young men from somewhere have suddenly appeared. And she assumes that they are, excuse me, her nephew's friends. Now, three is in many cultures is considered a sacred number, or a special number in any case. In the Christian religion, of course, you have the Trinity, but in other traditions, three is also significant. So it's interesting that there were three young men that were in this kitchen. Where the nephew had gone at this point isn't clear either. But what's interesting about that, again, you have this young spirits, these young kind of unthinking spirits, who do things like put the groceries in the oven, put things in the oven with the wrapping still on, and put vegetables that should be in the fridge into the oven. I mean, it's that, again, the eternal youth that doesn't really think about what they do. They just kind of blunder along and get through life and have a good time. But the turning to the oven, it's quite interesting, because the items are, instead of being put in the fridge or in the freezer, they are being put into the oven. And there's this is where there's there's a couple of different ways that this could be looked at. And one of the things is that there perhaps a concern here being expressed with regard to the nephew, the actual nephew in waking life, who is an adolescent. He's growing up, and there's all kinds of interesting connotations with these groceries, and the fact that he's growing up and starting to notice girls and go out with girls and what have you. Some of the more obvious um, indications that could possibly indicate that this transition is occurring with the nephew is that you have an oven, you have a hot oven, and you have things in wrappers stuck in the oven. I mean, that's a pretty graphic description of what sex can be like these days. And the things that were taken out of the oven and put into the fridge to cool off where they're supposed to be, things like peppers, and I think of expressions like hot tomatoes when people were talking about, sexy women years back, back in ancient times. But hot tomatoes, or she's hot as a firecracker, chili peppers. So it makes me wonder if these hot tomatoes that were in the oven needed to be put on ice or be put to be cooled down. And I would really be intrigued to know what vegetables exactly were taken out of the oven and put into the fridge. um, but in any case, you're talking about taking the heat off and cooling things down. Now, the other thing was that the grill was on, and there was an emphasis on this being Spanish tortillas, and Spanish tortillas are not the same as Mexican ones. That the word is the same, but the actual tortilla is different. So it made me wonder if there's why it was specifically mentioned as being Spanish tortillas, and if there's a connection perhaps with going on holidays, as many Brits like to do, or that may change now with Brexit. But Spain is a very popular holiday spot. Lots of young Brits like to go to the certain of the islands and different places in Spain and let their hair down, among other things. And I wonder if there may be something there, with regard to, like I said, this young man who's growing into manhood. Now, these three boys that were in the kitchen with the dreamer wanted to eat these tortillas, even even though they were actually had been put into the oven with the wrappers on. And that's a pretty nice euphemism when you think about it. Putting something in an oven with wrapping on it. I mean, that if that doesn't sound like a condom, I don't know what does. But there you go. But the tortillas needed to be unwrapped in order to finish the grilling. And there's some kind of worrying implications with that. But the remaining packages were put back into the fridge, but then afterwards the dreamer threw them away because she realized that they were full of mold. Mold, which could be perhaps a synonym or euphemism for something being diseased or unhealthy. Um, but as it happens, the boys had defrosted or melted these tortillas, and then left them, and they became moldy. And like I said, if we're looking at this as that this dream is actually about um, a young man growing in adolescence and growing towards manhood, you know, it's this dream could be pretty graphic as to what the his aunt's concerns are with regard to his behavior. And then finally, you have the school hours. Now, this again could be a bit of a reference to the pandemic. This the nephew is supposed to, it's 3:30 p.m. and very clearly again the threes have appeared, and the nephew should be coming home from school at this time, but yet he's going to school. And it makes me wonder again here, it's like, well, what is he learning if he's not, if school is out and school is shut down in any case under this at the moment, where was he going for this learning? And this kind of goes back to the, the vegetables and hot tomatoes and all the rest of it. So what was he learning? Where was he going to learn something after school hours? It could have been an after school program, but those are shut down at the moment. So what's going on there? And it's interesting because this actually made me think of my late sister and her three sons. She was at one point, she became a single parent and she made sure her working hours were such that she would be home when young men would, have a tendency to get themselves into a bit of trouble, particularly with girls, because the house is empty. So she changed her work hours to make sure that she was home at a time when they, might be tempted to do something they shouldn't. And that kind of gave me a feeling that there was more to this dream than what was immediately apparent, that there may be some concerns being expressed about a family member here and their behavior, their conduct, particularly with girls. Now we finally come to when the dreamer wakes up from this dream, and she says she has a sharp lemon taste in her mouth, um, and she feels like she swallowed a fly or a spider. Wow, that's pretty bizarre. But everything in a dream, even the smallest details, has a meaning. And I would wonder, and I would ask the dreamer if that's this lemon taste could perhaps be indicative of something that leaves a sour taste in the dreamer's mouth. Now, what that is remains to be seen. What resonates for the dreamer in terms of what is leaving this sour taste in her mouth is for her to determine. But, you look at lemons in general, they're indicative of, people think of sunshine, of citrus fruit, this brightness, perhaps some kind of illumination. Is it, there's things been lit up with this sunshine, and then you have the reference to the Sun newspaper to illuminate people. So it's shedding light. And perhaps that's what the whole purpose of this dream, well, all dreams are to shed light on some aspect of our lives and what we're feeling. But whereas that the implication of the, even though it's leaving a sour taste, it's leaving enlightenment or more clarity in its wake. Now, feeling like you swallowed a fly or a spider, excuse me, has two almost conflicting kinds of emotions going on here. Now you think of a fly, they light on excrement, they're on filth, but it could also be likened to annoying thoughts buzzing around and just getting lighting on stuff and mucking it up. But spiders aren't seen. I mean, unless you have a fear of spiders aren't quite seen in such a negative light. Well, theoretically, they eat flies. Step into my web, says the spider to the fly. But they also represent connection. You think of webs, we're on the web. So it's about connecting with others. A web is also a sticky trap. I mean, the creatures, whether they be flies or other insects and whatnot, sometimes in certain cases, even small birds and things can get caught in spider webs. Their webs are actually as strong as steel, believe it or not. For the tensile properties of the spider web is as strong as steel. But there's also another aspect of spiders, and in the mythology of various or religious beliefs of various cultures, spiders represent wisdom. For Native Americans, it's grandmother spider who weaves the world together. In and many African cultures, Anansi is a giver is a giver of wisdom and also a slap in the face. He's a trickster. But that there's that also this aspect of a spider as a dispenser of wisdom or bringing people, weaving people together. The in Greek mythology, the Ariadne who challenged Minerva for her in a weaving contest, the goddess got so pissed off she turned her into a spider. So, there's some kind of divine intervention or wisdom attached to spiders, whereas flies are seen in a much more negative light and get eaten by spiders. So maybe there's something here for the dreamer to think about with regard to um, two things. Actually, there's a on the personal level, on an individual level, there may be some concerns with regard to in waking life to the dreamer's nephew, and what his doings are as a young man. On another level, the dreamer is also going through a reassessment of her business and her working life, and there's this um, dichotomy, if you will, or this duality that we're either to kind of go the youthful way and just kind of wing it and enjoy the ride, as opposed to being more thoughtful, more mature in about the choices you make and the things that you do and who you associate with and what things you read even. And I wonder if for the dreamer that there is a concern with the way forward with regard to her business. And if you look at this dream, you could get either of those interpretations to come out of this. And there may even be others. I mean, the dreamer could conceivably go back in a year or two and look at this dream again and pull yet other information out of it. But there's either something to do with an interest with regard to her business, or there could be concerns with regard to family life. And neither interpretation is wrong. It's what actually resonates for the dreamer at this particular moment in time. As it happens, we did discuss this, and the interpretation, though she could see very clearly that the interpretation as regards the nephew, it felt for her at this moment in time that the interpretation with regard to her business and where to put her priorities and which direction to move in next resonated more. And that, as I said, when it feels right, you just know. And um, you have to trust yourself that that even when you don't, what is right or what resonates with you. So there you have it. That was a double dream and a single dream. And I thank you so much for watching and listening. It's wonderful to be back and being able to share with you. And have a great rest of the week. And I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye bye.